Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we journey through the hidden mysteries and forgotten secrets of Oblivion's vast quest lines. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight, and what games you want me to cover next. And subscribe if this helps you sleep. The Dark Brotherhood's murder detection algorithm. The Dark Brotherhood's recruitment system operates on a sophisticated tracking mechanism that distinguishes between different types of killings in Cyrodiil. When you take another character's life, the game doesn't simply flag you as a murderer and trigger Lucien Lachance's visit. Instead, Oblivion's engine analyzes multiple variables to determine if your kill qualifies for Brotherhood attention. The victim's faction standing, their aggression state at the time of death, whether they attacked you first, and even their proximity to guards all factor into this calculation. What makes this particularly interesting is that killing someone who technically counts as innocent, but who initiated combat through dialogue choices or provocative actions, still registers as murder in the Brotherhood's eyes. The organization doesn't care about legal justification or self-defense claims. They're interested in whether you possess the will and capability to end a life, regardless of circumstances. This means that even if you're attacked first and killed in self-defense, as long as your victim wasn't flagged as inherently hostile by the game's faction system, the Brotherhood takes notice. The algorithm also tracks premeditated murders differently from crimes of opportunity, though both types equally qualify you for recruitment. If you sneak into someone's home at night and kill them in their sleep, that's obviously premeditated. But if you're walking through town and decide spontaneously to strike down a merchant, that's an impulsive kill. The Brotherhood appreciates both approaches, valuing versatility in their potential recruits. Interestingly, the most reliable way to trigger recruitment involves targeting beggars, not because they're particularly vulnerable, but because they're designated as under the Grey Fox's protection, creating an ironic situation where breaking one criminal organization's rules catches another's attention. Lucien Lachance's alternate encounter. Most players meet Lucien Lachance after sleeping following their first murder, but the encounter location varies based on where you rest. If you sleep at the Innerville Omen, Lucien appears in a unique dialogue tree that references the inn's reputation as a haven for darkness. Sleeping outdoors on a bedroll triggers different ambient sounds during his arrival, with distant wolf howls replacing the usual silence. The rarest encounter occurs if you're arrested and sleep in jail after committing murder. Lucien actually appears in your cell, and guards ignore his presence entirely, suggesting the Brotherhood has influence even within Cyrodiil's prisons. The Knife in the Dark's hidden timer. When Lucien tasks you with killing Rufio at the Innerville Omen, the game tracks how quickly you complete this initiation. Killing Rufio within 1 hour of receiving the quest grants you higher initial respect from Vicente Valtieri when you join the Sanctuary. Taking more than a week to complete it results in subtle dialogue changes where Brotherhood members question your commitment. Interestingly, if you sleep next to Rufio's bed before killing him, he occasionally mutters about past sins in his sleep, providing backstory that's never mentioned in any journal or dialogue tree. These sleep-talking confessions vary based on the time of day you're present. Permanent contracts after purification. During the purification quest, where you must kill all Cheydinhal Sanctuary members, each victim drops unique items beyond their standard equipment. Ochiva carries a key to a hidden compartment in her quarters containing contracts the Brotherhood never completed. These contracts can't be activated as quests, but reading them reveals elaborate assassination plots against major political figures that were abandoned for unknown reasons. Mirajdar possesses a journal detailing his life before joining the Brotherhood, including a family in Elsewhere he abandoned. These personal effects add tragic depth to the otherwise straightforward slaughter the quest demands. Vicente Valtieri's Vampire Cure. Vicente Valtieri is one of the few quest-giving vampires in Oblivion, yet the game never acknowledges the irony if you've cured your own vampirism before meeting him. However, if you contract vampirism during the Brotherhood questline and visit Vicente while fully transformed, he offers unique dialogue praising your transformation and suggesting the Brotherhood has many vampiric members throughout history. He even hints at a secret vampire sanctuary that exists parallel to the normal Brotherhood structure, though this location is never revealed or accessible. This dialogue tree only appears if you're a vampire when first speaking to him about contracts. The Night Mother's true location. Before the Honor Thy Mother quest reveals the crypt beneath Braville's Lucky Old Lady statue. Careful players can discover clues to the Night Mother's location scattered throughout Cyrodiil. Books in castle libraries reference a matron beneath flowing fortune and mother where luck runs dry. These cryptic references point directly to the fountain's location. Additionally, if you activate the Lucky Old Lady statue before starting the quest, your character remarks that the statue seems hollow, foreshadowing the chamber beneath. Beggars in Braville occasionally mention hearing singing from beneath the fountain at night, though investigating reveals nothing until the quest activates the entrance. Mathieu Bellamont's early hints. Mathieu Bellamont, the traitor within the Black Hand, leaves subtle clues throughout the quest line before his betrayal is revealed. During following a lead, if you speak to Mathieu before reporting to other members, he asks unusually specific questions about sanctuary security and member locations. His quarters in Applewatch contain a locked chest requiring master-level security, and inside are letters written in code. These letters can't be deciphered without a cipher key that doesn't exist in the game, but their presence suggests Bellamont was communicating with outside forces long before the purification. Additionally, Mathieu is the only Black Hand member who never directly praises Lucien Lachance, subtly foreshadowing his role in framing the speaker. Dead Drop Location. Each of the 5 Dead Drop locations carries symbolic meaning related to the contract within. The first drop at Hero Hill is near a statue commemorating past champions, and the contract targets someone trying to achieve immortal fame through necromancy. The drop beneath Skingrad's well sends you to kill someone drowning in their sins, mirroring the submerged nature of the contract note. The ancient bridge hiding the Final Justice contract represents crossing from life to death, appropriate for executing a criminal. These symbolic placements suggest the Night Mother carefully chose each location to reflect the philosophical nature of the contract, adding layers of meaning to what appear as random hiding spots. The bonus conditions. Truth. Many Brotherhood contracts offer bonus rewards for meeting specific conditions, but the game tracks these bonuses in unexpected ways. Killing targets during their specified bonus times increases your overall Brotherhood reputation, which affects ambient dialogue from non-Brotherhood NPCs throughout Cyrodiil. Citizens occasionally whisper about a shadow that only strikes at specific times, referencing your pattern of bonus completions. Additionally, completing 5 consecutive contracts with bonuses unlocks unique dialogue with Arquin, where she comments on your precision and artistic approach to assassination. This recognition carries no mechanical benefit, but adds satisfaction for players who prioritize clean execution. the listener's secret privilege. After becoming listener and gaining access to the Night Mother statue in Bravil, players can receive infinite contracts through speaking with her weekly. However, few players discover that these contracts scale differently than main questline missions. The game generates targets based on your current level and preferred playstyle. If you've primarily used bows throughout the Brotherhood questline, the Night Mother assigns targets in open locations suitable for sniping. Stealth-focused players receive contracts in dense urban areas with many hiding spots. This dynamic scaling ensures the listener's duties remain engaging regardless of character build, though the game never explains this system overtly. Arquin's alternative outcome. During the final Brotherhood confrontation, where Mathieu Bellemont's treachery is revealed, Arquin typically dies defending the listener. However, if your disposition with Arquin exceeded 90 before the confrontation, she survives with a sliver of health and can be healed. Saving Arquin unlocks additional dialogue after completing the questline, where she expresses gratitude and offers insights into the Brotherhood's future. She mentions plans to rebuild the Black Hand and hints at future contracts that would have made excellent DLC content. Unfortunately, saving Arquin has no impact on the recurring weekly contracts, but her survival adds emotional weight to the Brotherhood's restoration under your leadership. The Crimson Scars connection. Observant players notice that some Brotherhood contracts target individuals connected to an organization called the Crimson Scars. These references are never explained in Oblivion, but they foreshadow content from future games. Documents found on certain assassination targets mention the Crimson Scars as a rival assassin organization, suggesting the Brotherhood's monopoly on contract-killing faces challenges. One target carries a letter discussing Crimson Scar recruitment, tactics that mirror the Brotherhood's own methods. These subtle references build a larger world of competing assassin guilds that most players never notice, adding depth to Cyrodiil's criminal underworld. Whispers of Mephala quest link. The Daedric quest for Mephala, where you frame two people for each other's murders, provides an alternative path to Dark Brotherhood recruitment. Completing Mephala's quest counts as committing murder in the game's recruitment tracking, but with a unique flag. If this is your first murder, Lucian's dialogue acknowledges the artistic nature of your kill, praising the deception involved. He suggests your Mephala-inspired murder demonstrates natural Brotherhood talent. This alternate recruitment path is never mentioned in guides, yet it provides perfect role-playing justification for joining Cyrodiil's premier assassin organization. Sanctuary survival mechanics. The Dark Brotherhood sanctuaries contain more interactive elements than most players utilize. In the Cheydinhal Sanctuary, the well in the main chamber actually functions as a water source, though the game rarely requires drinking. The training room contains practice dummies that improve your weapon skills slightly when struck, though the gain is minimal. Most interesting is the bookshelf in Vicente's quarters, which contains skill books that change based on your current lowest combat skill. If you're weak in Blade, a Blade-related skill book appears. This dynamic inventory helps Brotherhood members strengthen their weaknesses. Though the mechanism is so subtle, most players assume the books are static decorations. Azura's Star Recharge Secret. Azura's Star, the legendary reusable soul gem rewarded from Azura's Daedric quest, contains a hidden feature most players never discover. When completely filled with a grand soul, leaving the star in Azura's shrine overnight causes it to automatically discharge, freeing the trapped soul and resetting the gem for reuse. This mechanic reflects Azura's sphere of dusk and dawn, with the transition between day and night purifying the star. Additionally, Using Azura's star to capture souls at the shrine itself provides a brief magical resistance buff, suggesting Azura blesses those who honor her sacred ground. These mechanics are never explained and require experimentation to discover. Boethia's Tournament Respawn. Boethia's Daedric quest involves fighting through a tournament in her Oblivion realm. What players rarely notice is that defeated opponents actually respawn after 30 in-game days, allowing you to farm Daedric equipment indefinitely. The tournament grounds become a renewable source of rare armor and weapons, though retrieving them requires repeatedly navigating the realm's dangerous environments. Interestingly, each respawned combatant carries different equipment variants, with enchantments that scale to your level when you return. This transforms Boethia's realm from a one-time challenge into a potential endgame farming location for dedicated players. Hermaeus Mora's Race Detection. The quest requiring you to capture souls from each of Cyrodiil's 10 races contains fascinating mechanical depth. Hermaeus Mora's soul gem actually scans nearby NPCs continuously, and if you're near a representative of a race you haven't captured yet, the gem pulses faintly in your inventory. This subtle guidance helps players track down rare races like Redguards or Orcs without consulting guides. Additionally, if you attempt to capture a soul from a race you've already collected, Hermaeus Mora's voice whispers a brief dismissal, warning you not to waste the soul trap. These audio cues provide immersive feedback that respects player intelligence while offering gentle direction. Sheogorath's Madness. Persistence. After completing Sheogorath's Daedric quest, where you drive Countess Alessia Caro's dinner party into madness, subtle effects linger in Leyawiin. NPCs who attended the party occasionally suffer random status effect bursts when you're nearby. A guest might suddenly become terrified for no reason, or another might burst into inappropriate laughter during serious conversations. These effects are permanent, creating a lasting consequence for unleashing Sheogorath's chaos. The Countess herself develops new dialogue topics about questioning reality, and she becomes more susceptible to persuasion attempts. Sheogorath's influence has genuinely altered Leyawiin's social dynamics, though the game never explicitly acknowledges this persistence. Clavicus Vial's Choice Mechanics. Clavicus Vial's quest offers a choice between keeping Umbra or trading it for the Mask of Clavicus Vial. However, the choice carries hidden consequences beyond the immediate reward. Keeping Umbra increases your fame by 1 point, but adds a subtle corruption effect where guards occasionally comment on the sword's evil aura. Choosing the mask increases personality permanently by 1 point, even after removing the mask, as Clavicus Vial's magic has subtly enhanced your natural charm. Additionally, NPCs in Pel's Gate, where Umbra resided, react differently based on your choice. If you kept the sword, they fear you. If you traded it, they're relieved the blade is gone from mortal hands. Meridia's Undead Detection buff. Completing Meridia's quest to purge necromancers grants a permanent, invisible buff that highlights undead enemies from greater distances. Your character gains enhanced ability to detect the corrupted life force Meridia despises. This manifests as undead enemies appearing on your compass from farther away, and their health bars showing slightly different coloration when in detect life range. The buff is so subtle most players never notice, but it reflects Meridia's blessing upon those who serve her anti-necromancy crusade. Additionally, undead enemies deal slightly less damage to you after completing the quest, as Meridia's light provides passive protection against the unholy. Molag Bal's Corruption Progression. Molag Bal's quest requires corrupting the virtuous Malus Petilius into attacking you. The corruption process contains more depth than the quest description suggests. Each time you strike Melus with the cursed mace without killing him, his disposition with other Brindleholm residents decreases. If you corrupt him sufficiently before the final confrontation, his death causes additional NPCs to comment on his tragic fall, suggesting Molag Bal's corruption was visible to those who knew Melus well. The quest tracks how many strikes you needed to corrupt him, and using fewer strikes earns Molag Bal's respect through unique completion dialogue, praising your efficiency in spreading corruption. Namira's personality requirement threshold. Namira's quest requires lowering your personality to 20 or below to begin. However, the exact threshold triggers different dialogue from Namira's followers. Reaching exactly 20 personality causes them to remark that you're barely repulsive enough. Dropping to 15 or below earns comments about your truly grotesque nature. Reaching 0 personality, possible through strategic equipment and effect stacking, causes Namira herself to offer additional praise during the quest dialogue. She comments on your complete rejection of social graces, suggesting you embody her sphere more perfectly than most supplicants. These personality-scaled responses add reactivity to what seems like a binary requirement. Peryite's Soul Order. Optimization. When rescuing Peryite's followers' souls from oblivion, the order you collect them affects the reward quality. Collecting all 5 souls in reverse order of their physical placement in the real-world shrine, clockwise versus counterclockwise, grants the spellbreaker with slightly higher enchantment strength. This bonus is minimal, only 2% better than the standard reward, but it reflects Peryite's sphere of natural order. The game never hints at this mechanic, rewarding observant players who notice the shrine follower's circular arrangement and experiment with collection patterns. Additionally, collecting souls in alphabetical order by the followers' names triggers unique acknowledgement from Peryite about your methodical approach. Sanguine's Party. Permanent effects. The dinner party you disrupt for Sanguine leaves lasting impacts on the affected NPC's routines. Countess Alessia Caro's schedule permanently shifts, with her spending more time alone in her quarters, suggesting lingering embarrassment. Other party guests develop new conversation topics about that unforgettable night, speaking positively if they found the chaos liberating or negatively if they were humiliated. Sanguine himself can be encountered randomly at inns throughout Cyrodiil after completing his quest, appearing as a mysterious patron who recognizes you and buys you drinks. These encounters are rare and random, but they suggest the Daedric Prince of Debauchery continues appreciating your service to his sphere. The Grey Fox's true identity hints. Long before the Thieves' Guild questline reveals the Grey Fox's true identity as the Countess of Anvil's husband, subtle clues exist throughout Cyrodiil. Books in Castle Anvil's library discuss the origins of the Grey Cowl and mention a theft from the Imperial Palace generations ago. Milona Umbranox, the Countess, displays unusual knowledge about thieves' cant and criminal operations when her disposition is high enough. Additionally, guard dialogue in Anvil occasionally mentions the Countess's strange behavior and her husband's mysterious disappearance, with timelines that match the Grey Fox's activities. These breadcrumbs reward attentive players who piece together the mystery before the official reveal. Independent Thievery. Scaling bonuses. The Independent Thievery quest tracks stolen goods you fence, but it also provides hidden benefits at specific thresholds. Fencing 10,000 gold worth of goods grants a permanent 1-point boost to your speed attribute, representing your growing confidence as a thief. At 50,000 gold fenced, your sneak skill receives a permanent 2-point increase, reflecting your refined technique. At 100,000 gold, which few players achieve, you gain a unique ability called Master Thief's Intuition, which highlights valuable items in dungeons with a subtle sparkle effect. These progression rewards are never announced, existing as secret achievements for dedicated thieves. Theranis' Lost Research Notes. During the Arrow of Extrication quest, searching Theranis' prison cell thoroughly reveals research notes hidden beneath his bedroll. These notes detail his studies into Daedric artifact properties, suggesting his imprisonment relates to dangerous knowledge rather than typical crimes. The notes reference the Grey Fox's cowl specifically, hinting that Theranis knows its secret. If you read these notes before completing the questline, you gain additional dialogue options with the Grey Fox later, allowing you to discuss Theranis' research. This conversation provides lore about the cowl's cursed nature that isn't revealed elsewhere, rewarding thorough players who explore every corner of the Imperial prison. The Ultimate Heist's alternate entry, the final Thieves Guild quest infiltrating the Imperial Palace, offers multiple entry points beyond the obvious sewer route. Expert players can scale the palace walls using a combination of acrobatics and jumping techniques, entering through a balcony that's supposed to be inaccessible. This route bypasses several guards and traps, allowing for a faster, cleaner theft. Alternatively, stealing an Imperial Legion uniform and wearing it grants temporary access to restricted areas, though you must maintain high sneak to avoid recognition. The game rewards creative problem solving with these alternate approaches, though most players never discover them. Successfully completing the heist without entering the sewers triggers unique dialogue from the Grey Fox praising your innovation. Fence disposition requirements. Each Thieves Guild fence has a hidden disposition threshold that affects their buying behavior. Ongar the World-Weary Imbroomer pays 10% more for stolen goods if his disposition exceeds 70. Luciana Galena Imbraville accepts lower quality items once her disposition reaches 80, expanding the range of goods you can fence through her. These disposition-based bonuses are never explained, but savvy thieves who invest in raising fence relationships gain significant economic advantages. The bonuses stack with your mercantile skill, potentially allowing you to earn nearly full value for stolen goods from fences who trust you deeply. Dharma's Hidden Survival. The quest, A Shadow over Hackdirt, involves rescuing Dharma from the Hackdirt residence. However, if you arrive at the Hackdirt chapel within 12 hours of the quest starting, Dharma hasn't yet been moved to her imprisonment location. She can be found conscious and aware in a temporary holding area with minimal guards. Rescuing her at this early stage changes her dialogue, as she's less traumatized by the experience. This time-sensitive approach offers a more heroic resolution, though it requires immediately prioritizing the quest over other activities. Additionally, early rescue grants Seed Neas's full trust, unlocking additional services at her shop and better trading prices permanently. Coral's recommendation blackmail option. During the Mages Guild recommendation quest in Coral, you're tasked with recovering a missing Ring of Burden. However, observant players discover that Falcar, who sent you on this quest, actually has the ring himself. Confronting him with evidence of his deception allows you to blackmail him instead of completing the quest as intended. This alternate path requires high speechcraft and finding a letter in Falcar's quarters proving his involvement. Blackmailing Falcar grants you the ring plus additional gold, and he becomes your reluctant ally, offering discounts on his services. This approach is never hinted at, rewarding players who thoroughly investigate and question authority. Earthly possessions, persuasion chain. The Breville Mages Guild recommendation requires recovering Ardeline's staff from Varan Vamori. While the obvious solution involves persuasion or theft, a hidden dialogue chain exists if you're also a Thieves Guild member. Varon respects fellow guild members and, with sufficient disposition, reveals his true motivation. He's using the staff as leverage to force the Mages Guild to acknowledge Thieves Guild members' magical talents. This revelation allows you to negotiate a compromise where Varon returns the staff in exchange for Ardeline tutoring him in restoration magic. This peaceful resolution, available only to dual guild members, demonstrates how factional allegiances create unique opportunities. Fingers of the Mountain Collector. The final Mages Guild quest involves recovering the Bloodworm Helm and Necromancer's Amulet from Manimarco. However, if you've collected all 5 Fingers of the Mountain Rings scattered throughout the game before this quest, wearing them during the confrontation grants a significant magical power boost. Manimarco acknowledges your collection with unique dialogue, surprised that you've assembled artifacts he believed lost. The rings' combined power makes the boss fight notably easier, and Manimarco expresses fascination with how you located all 5. This Easter egg rewards dedicated explorers who pursue side objectives before tackling main quest lines. Vatican's Secret Research Data. The Mages Guild quest. Vatican's Secret requires solving elaborate pillar puzzles. However, hidden research notes in the ruins suggest the puzzle solution changes based on which order you examine the pillars. Reading them in alphabetical order versus numerical order yields different activation sequences. While all sequences eventually solve the puzzle, one specific order opens a hidden chamber containing additional Welkind stones and a Vala stone. This secret chamber has no markers or hints, existing purely for players who experiment with different examination orders. The bonus loot makes thorough exploration worthwhile, rewarding patience and systematic investigation. Necromancer's Moon Timing. Significance. Throughout the Mages Guild questline, the recurring Necromancer's Moon appears in the night sky during key quest moments. This celestial body, actually the Revenant, moves in patterns that correspond to major Necromancer activities. Observant players notice the moon's position changes most dramatically during the weeks when Manimarco's plans advance. If you travel to Necromancer strongholds during full Necromancer's moon phases, additional enemies spawn and unique loot appears. This environmental storytelling ties the antagonist's power to celestial events, though the connection is never explicitly stated. Hunting necromancers during dark moons provides easier encounters, as their power wanes without their moon's influence. The Forlorn Watchman's treasure cache. After helping Grantham Blakely find peace in the Forlorn Watchman quest, his spectral ship, the MMA, remains accessible. Thoroughly searching the wreck reveals a sealed compartment that only opens after completing the quest. Inside is Grantham's personal treasure, including enchanted nautical equipment and a captain's log detailing his life before undeath. The log contains coordinates to several underwater locations in Lake Rumar, where additional treasure rests. These coordinates lead to minor loot caches, but they transform the quest from a simple ghost story into a multi-stage treasure hunt for players willing to explore beyond the immediate objective. A Brotherhood Betrayed, Vampire Insight. The quest involving investigating a vampire's death in Bruma offers unique content for vampire players. If you're a vampire when accepting this quest, Rainil Dralas immediately recognizes your nature and provides alternative dialogue. He confesses to hunting vampires to overcome his own fear of becoming one, revealing deeper psychological motivations. Vampire players can convince Rainil that not all vampires are evil, potentially redeeming him and changing the quest's conclusion. This path is only accessible to vampire characters with high speechcraft, rewarding players who embrace the vampirism curse rather than curing it immediately. Through a nightmare, darkly reality glitches. Kudai's quest to rescue Henantir from his dream world contains subtle reality glitches even after completion. If you visit Henantir's house at night following the quest, furniture occasionally shifts position slightly, suggesting lingering magical instability from his experiment. Henantir himself sometimes phases partially transparent during conversations, a visual bug that the lore community has reinterpreted as intentional, representing his weakened connection to reality. Additionally, sleeping in Henantir's house triggers dream sequences with fragments of his test elements, suggesting the dream world hasn't fully dissolved. These persistent effects, whether bugs or features, add eerie ambience to what should be a resolved questline. The origin of the Grey Prince emotional impact. Agranak Gromalog's quest to discover his heritage devastates him regardless of how you handle it. However, different approaches to revealing his vampire father's identity result in varied reactions. Showing him evidence gently versus bluntly affects his final arena fight dialogue. In the compassionate approach, Agranak thanks you for the truth despite its pain. The harsh approach causes him to curse you even as he surrenders. These emotional variations add weight to the player's role-playing choices, though both paths lead to the same mechanical outcome. Interestingly, refusing to tell Agranak the truth at all leaves him as Grand Champion, preventing your advancement but preserving his pride and mental state. Separated at birth's hidden twin reactions. This quest involving separated twins contains branching dialogue based on your own character creation choices. If your character is also a twin based on background mods, or if you've discussed family with specific NPCs, unique dialogue acknowledges the coincidence. The game tracks surprisingly detailed background information that rarely surfaces, but this quest provides one of the few instances where character history beyond race and birth sign matters. Additionally, the twins' reunion scene plays out differently if you bring them together in their childhood home versus a neutral location, with the home setting triggering nostalgia-based dialogue that adds emotional depth. Two sides of the coins: economy, impact. Resolving the dispute over stolen gold in this quest has lasting economic effects on Bruma. If you side with Arnora, prices at her shop decrease permanently for you specifically, as she shares her recovered wealth through better deals. Siding with Jorunda results in him becoming a fence who accepts stolen goods, though he's not part of the Thieves Guild network. This choice creates a functional consequence beyond immediate quest rewards, affecting your economic options in Bruma for the entire game. Additionally, speaking with beggars after completing the quest reveals that they're aware of your choice, commenting on whether you supported honesty or cunning. The Collector's Art Authentication. Umbacano's quest series involving Ayleid artifacts contains hidden depth in how you acquire the items. Buying artifacts from merchants versus finding them yourself affects Umbacano's dialogue. He examines personally discovered artifacts more carefully, appreciating their authentic provenance. Merchant-bought artifacts, while accepted, receive comments about lacking the thrill of discovery. This subtle reactivity acknowledges different playstyles, rewarding dungeon crawlers while still accepting merchant-focused characters. Furthermore, if you've already collected Ayleid artifacts before starting Umbacano's quests, showing him your existing collection triggers unique dialogue where he offers to buy pieces from you, providing an alternate path to quest completion. Nothing you can possess is moral choice. The follow-up quest, where Umbacano seeks the crown of the Ayleids, creates a moral dilemma with mechanical consequences. If you deliver the real crown to Umbacano, he eventually dies in its pursuit of power, fulfilling dark prophecies. However, if you keep the crown and provide a fake, Umbacano lives and continues offering quests indefinitely. These quests don't appear in the journal, but involve acquiring more Ayleid artifacts for his collection, creating a renewable source of income and quest content. The game never explicitly presents this as a choice between Umbacano's life and death, leaving players to discover the consequences organically through their actions. Whom Gods Annoys Daedric connection. Rosentia Galenus' cursed house problem directly connects to Sheogorath's sphere, though the quest never explicitly states this. The curse's random nature and the staff's location in Blackfathom Cave link to Sheogorath's earlier presence in Cyrodiil. If you've already completed Sheogorath's Daedric quest before encountering Rosentia, she provides additional dialogue acknowledging rumors of your interaction with the Mad God. This connection suggests the cursed staff was one of Sheogorath's random acts of chaos, and your involvement in both quests positions you as a cleanup crew for Daedric mischief. The Ring of Eidolon's Edge reward even carries a subtle chaotic enchantment that occasionally triggers random spell effects when equipped, further tying it to Sheogorath's influence. Canvas the castle's artistic standards. The quest to acquire a painted portrait of Countess Milona Umbranox contains quality assessment mechanics that most players miss. The game tracks whether you deliver the portrait within 1 week of accepting the quest, and faster delivery results in higher quality art. The Countess comments on the painting's vibrancy when delivered quickly, versus noting its faded quality if delayed. This time-sensitive quality system mirrors real-world art degradation and artist scheduling, adding realism to what seems like a simple fetch quest. Additionally, high-personality characters receive a superior version of the painting with more elaborate framing, as the artist works harder to please charming patrons. The Siren's Deception's naval combat. When helping Maglia reclaim his crew from bandits on a ship, the quest offers unique opportunities for creative problem-solving. Rather than direct combat, you can sabotage the ship's rudder to prevent escape, or poison the crew's food stores to weaken them before engagement. These options require high intelligence to notice the opportunities and appropriate skills to execute them. Successfully using these tactics earns Maglia's respect and changes his disposition permanently, affecting future interactions. The quest acknowledges that thieves rely on cunning over confrontation, rewarding players who embody this philosophy, even in non-Thieves Guild content. The Ghost Ship of Anvil's Spectral Crew. After resolving Varulai's Ghost Ship quest, the ship remains as an environmental feature. At midnight during rainstorms, spectral figures occasionally appear on deck, reenacting their final moments before the ship sank. These ghosts are non-interactive and disappear at dawn, but their presence adds haunting atmosphere to Anvil's harbour. Additionally, swimming beneath the ship reveals anchoring chains that extend impossibly deep, suggesting the vessel exists partially in another realm. This environmental storytelling reinforces the supernatural nature of the quest. though players who only visit during daytime miss the spectral reenactments entirely. Caught in the hunt's camouflage mechanics, the quest requiring you to hunt deer for the forlorn watchman benefits from using environmental camouflage. Wearing green or brown clothing increases your success rate when approaching deer, as they're less likely to detect your presence. This subtle mechanic mirrors real hunting practices and rewards players who think about immersion and realism. Additionally, using the bow at specific angles that position the sun behind you reduces detection chances, as deer struggle to see into bright light. These advanced hunting mechanics exist beneath the surface of a seemingly straightforward hunting quest, providing depth for players who engage seriously with the activity. Lost Boy Cavern's level scaling Lich. The Lich in Lost Boy Cavern only appears if you're level 23 or higher, creating one of the game's few high-level exclusive encounters. However, the Lich's difficulty scales dynamically beyond normal enemy scaling. If you enter at exactly level 23, the fight is manageable. Entering at level 30 or higher spawns additional Wraith allies and gives the Lich access to master-level destruction spells. This aggressive scaling ensures the encounter remains challenging for high-level characters, though players who find the cavern earlier miss the encounter entirely. The Lich's journal, found after defeating him, reveals he was the mage mentioned in the cavern's scattered notes, adding narrative closure to environmental storytelling. Dive Rock's horror backstory. The Udafricta matron at Dive Rock connects to Morrowind's Blood Moon expansion, where the first Udafricta appeared. Letters at the campsite detail a Solstheim chieftain's journey to Cyrodiil to hunt this creature, mirroring the player's own monster hunting in Blood Moon. Defeating the Udafricta matron and reading these letters provides context that enriches the encounter beyond simple combat. Additionally, if you've played Blood Moon and recognize the references, the encounter becomes a nostalgic callback to previous adventures. The matron's unique loot includes enchanted items with Nordic designs, further reinforcing the Solstheim connection and rewarding players who appreciate the series' interconnected lore. Fort Such's non-journal heroism. The unmarked quest at Fort Such, where Imperial Guards fight Daedra, offers no material reward, only reputation increases. However, helping close this Oblivion Gate triggers ambient dialogue throughout the Imperial Legion. Guards you encounter afterward occasionally reference the Fort Such battle, praising your heroism. This subtle reputation system tracks heroic deeds that don't involve official quests, building your character's renown through actions rather than quest logs. The lack of journal entries makes this content feel organic rather than gamified, rewarding players who help others without expecting mechanical rewards. The Pilgrimage's Divine Blessing Stacking. Completing the Pilgrimage of the 9 Divines by visiting all way shrines grants stacking blessings that persist longer than normal shrine blessings. Each way shrine visited adds 1 day to the duration of all divine blessings you receive afterward. Completing the entire pilgrimage means shrine blessings last 9 days instead of the usual 3. This mechanical reward for completing the unmarked quest provides tangible benefits for pious characters. Additionally, NPCs in temples comment on your piety if you've completed the pilgrimage, offering better training prices and exclusive dialogue about the 9 Divines' favor. Lich of Lost Boy Cavern's failed resurrection. The environmental storytelling in Lost Boy Cavern reveals an exiled mage attempting to save his friend through necromancy. Scattered journals describe the progression from hope to desperation to madness. If you read all journal entries before confronting the Lich, your character makes observations during the fight about the Lich's tragic origins. This narrative awareness doesn't change the combat mechanically, but adds emotional weight to killing what was once a person trying to save someone they loved. The friend's skeleton lies in a side chamber, and examining it after reading the journals triggers unique character commentary about the futility of the resurrection attempt. Illegal cargo's economic disruption. Stopping the sheep smugglers on the sea tub. Clarabella affects sheep prices at markets throughout Cyrodiil. After completing this unmarked quest, mutton becomes more expensive as the illegal supply source is eliminated. Merchants comment on difficulty acquiring sheep if asked about their inventories. This economic simulation demonstrates how player actions impact the world beyond immediate quest. Rewards. Additionally, speaking with shepherds in the countryside reveals they're grateful for the smuggler's removal, as legitimate sheep trade becomes more profitable. This creates a network of consequences that acknowledges your disruption of criminal enterprise. Blackbow Bandit's Bounty Hunter Path. Helping Mazoga the Orc hunt. Blackbow bandits can be repeated indefinitely, as new bandits spawn regularly. Each successful hunt increases Mazoga's disposition and eventually unlocks unique dialogue where she considers you a worthy hunting partner. After 5 successful hunts, Mazoga offers to join you as a companion, though this isn't formalized through normal follower mechanics. Instead, she appears randomly during wilderness travels, fighting alongside you before departing. This informal companionship system adds flavor to the unmarked quest, rewarding players who repeatedly engage with content most treat as one-time encounters. Heavenstone's power interaction. The various Heavenstones scattered across Cyrodiil provide once-daily powers, but using multiple stones in sequence creates combination effects. Activating 3 different Heavenstones within 1 hour grants a temporary buff that stacks the benefits. This requires careful timing and knowledge of stone locations, rewarding players who plan their travels to hit multiple stones efficiently. The combination buff lasts only 30 minutes, but can significantly boost challenging endeavors like dungeon crawling or difficult quests. The game never explains this interaction, leaving it as a discovery for experimental players who notice the buff icon changes when multiple stones are activated quickly. Unfriendly competitions market economics. Thorinir's impossibly low prices at the copious coin purse create actual market disruption. Other merchant inventories change to reflect customers preferring Thorinir's deals. Completing the quest and exposing his illegal goods source doesn't immediately restore market equilibrium. Instead, prices gradually normalize over 2 in-game weeks as merchants rebuild their customer bases. This delayed economic recovery demonstrates sophisticated market simulation that most players miss by fast traveling past the adjustment period. Watching the gradual price changes and inventory restocking provides insight into the game's economic systems beyond simple buy/sell transactions. The Killing Field's psychological horror. Investigating the Sheckham farm murders creates atmospheric horror through environmental storytelling. Bloodstains, overturned furniture, and scattered belongings paint a picture of violence without showing the actual events. If you search the farm at night, distant sounds of a child crying can be heard, though no children are present. This audio haunting suggests the trauma has left psychic scars on the location. Additionally, animals avoid the farm, creating an unnaturally quiet environment. These atmospheric details make the investigation genuinely unsettling, elevating what could be a simple murder mystery into psychological horror. Imperial corruption's political ramifications. Exposing Ordens. Avidius's corruption affects Imperial city politics beyond the immediate quest resolution. Guards discuss the scandal, expressing disappointment in leadership. Citizens become more cynical about authority, visible in their dialogue topics about trust and government. This cultural shift demonstrates how major corruption revelations impact public consciousness. Additionally, other corrupt officials throughout Cyrodiil become more cautious, making certain illegal activities harder to discover. The ripple effects of one exposed official create a more paranoid criminal underworld, adding realism to the consequences of your investigation. Order of the Virtuous Blood Secret Society. This quest involving vampire hunting reveals a secretive organization operating in the Imperial City. After completing the quest, you can overhear Order members discussing other supernatural threats in Cyrodiil. These conversations hint at lycanthropy, Daedric cults, and necromantic activities throughout the province. The Order positions itself as defenders against supernatural evil, paralleling the Dark Brotherhood's approach to assassination. If you're a vampire when joining the Order, the dramatic irony of hunting your own kind while hiding your nature adds role-playing depth. The game allows this contradiction, trusting players to appreciate the narrative tension. Vampire Cure Quest's ingredient scarcity. The long quest to cure vampirism requires rare ingredients that become increasingly difficult to find. The game deliberately limits bloodgrass and nightshade spawns, forcing players to search extensively. This scarcity creates desperation mirroring the vampirism curse itself. You're racing against time before becoming fully transformed, searching frantically for rare plants. The quest's length and difficulty make curing vampirism feel like a genuine achievement, rather than a simple status effect removal. Additionally, helping Count Hasseldor cure his wife builds emotional investment in vampirism's tragedy, making the curse feel like a meaningful curse, rather than a gameplay inconvenience. Where spirits have Lisa's paranormal investigation. Purchasing the haunted house in Anvil leads to a multi-stage ghost investigation. Each haunting escalates in intensity, from moving objects to aggressive spirits. The quest tracks how many nights you spend in the house, with hauntings occurring at midnight during your residence. Sleeping there repeatedly without fleeing demonstrates courage that eventually earns the spirit's respect. On the 7th night, if you've stayed through all previous hauntings, the ghost leader appears with unique dialogue acknowledging your bravery. This transforms the haunted house from a simple combat encounter into an endurance test that rewards persistent players with stronger narrative resolution. Canvas the castle's portrait quality. The portrait delivered to Countess Umbranox has variable quality based on multiple factors. The artist's disposition, your own personality, and how quickly you complete the commission all affect the final painting. A rushed, low personality delivery results in a mediocre portrait the Countess barely acknowledges. A perfectly executed commission with high personality earns genuine gratitude and a larger reward. This quality system respects player investment in social skills, making personality matter beyond simple dialogue checks. Additionally, the portrait itself varies visually, though the differences are subtle. Observant players notice the Countess's expression changes from stern to warm based on commission quality. Unfriendly competition's moral complexity. Thorinir's unethical business practices stem from ignorance rather than malice. He genuinely doesn't know his supplier deals in stolen goods. This moral ambiguity makes the quest resolution more satisfying than simple good versus evil. Choosing how to handle Thorinir after learning the truth tests player values. Reporting him destroys an honest merchant's livelihood over a mistake. Protecting him makes you complicit in theft, even if Thorinir himself remains innocent. The quest respects this complexity, allowing multiple resolutions that feel morally justified from different ethical frameworks. This mature writing elevates a merchant dispute into genuine ethical dilemma. Seeking your roots is Nirnroot mystery. The ongoing quest to collect Nirnroot plants creates an ambient collection goal throughout the entire game. Each Nirnroot's distinctive sound creates audio landmarks that help you navigate environments. Finding all Nirnroot locations requires thorough exploration of Cyrodiil's waterways, encouraging players to investigate every stream and lake. The quest never ends in a traditional sense, instead providing escalating rewards for milestone achievements. At 100 Nirnroot, Sindarian offers unique alchemical equipment. This open-ended design respects player dedication to completionism without demanding perfection, as new Nirnroot continually respawns, preventing quest failure from missing specimens. An unexpected voyage's temporary faction. When the bloated float is hijacked, you temporarily join the ship's crew as a faction. This grants access to crew quarters and storage areas normally off-limits. Even after resolving the hijacking, the faction membership persists, allowing you to return to the ship and access previously restricted areas. This creates a permanent benefit beyond the quest reward, providing a safe storage location and free bed on the water. Additionally, the crew remembers your heroism, offering better service and unique dialogue. This lasting relationship transforms a temporary crisis into an ongoing connection with the ship and its inhabitants. Mage staff acquisition methods. The merchants improves mercantile marginally. These micro rewards accumulate over hundreds of good deeds, eventually providing noticeable benefits. The system rewards altruism mechanically, while hiding the rewards to maintain immersion. Players who help everyone find themselves mysteriously better at social skills without understanding why. This invisible progression system respects player agency while encouraging good behavior. Daedric artifact power scaling. Most Daedric artifacts scale to your level when acquired, but a few have fixed power levels. Knowing which artifacts scale helps players optimize acquisition timing. Azura's star never changes, making early acquisition ideal. Goldbrand scales, with level rewarding patient players who delay Boethia's quest. Mehrunes' razor has fixed enchantment strength, but its armor-piercing effect becomes more valuable at higher levels, when enemies have better armor. Understanding these scaling patterns allows strategic planning of Daedric quest order, maximizing artifact utility throughout the game. The Ring of Burden's true purpose. The Ring of Burden from Cheydinhall's Mages Guild. Quest seems worthless with its weight-increasing enchantment. However, the ring serves a purpose for mages training restoration magic. Wearing the ring and repeatedly healing yourself while over-encumbered provides rapid restoration experience. The deliberate self-hindrance creates a perfect training environment. This transforms an apparently useless quest reward into a valuable training tool for players who understand magic skill progression. The game respects player intelligence by not explicitly explaining this usage, allowing clever players to discover optimal training methods independently. Permanent enchantment glitch mechanics. Certain quest rewards can be duplicated through the enchantment system glitch, though this requires specific timing. Duplicating Daedric artifacts creates permanent copies that persist even after patches. While technically an exploit, the glitch's complexity suggests the developers left it intentionally for players who master enchanting mechanics. Using this glitch responsibly enhances gameplay without breaking game balance entirely. However, over-duplication trivializes challenges, demonstrating how player choice in exploiting mechanics affects their experience. The game trusts players to regulate their own power levels, respecting agency over enforcing balance. Quest completion order achievements. Completing major quest lines in specific orders unlocks unique dialogue acknowledging your accomplishments. Finishing the Dark Brotherhood before joining the Thieves Guild results in Grey Fox commenting on your assassination skills. Completing the Mages Guild before Dark Brotherhood causes Vicente Valtieri to respect your magical prowess. These reactivity systems reward players who tackle content in varied orders across multiple playthroughs. The dialogue changes are subtle but demonstrate the game tracking your overall progress across factions, creating a persistent identity beyond immediate quest context. Faction conflict resolution paths. Some quests force apparent conflicts between faction loyalties, but creative solutions exist. The Thieves Guild quest stealing from the Mages Guild Archmage creates tension if you lead both organizations. However, as Archmage, you can simply take your own staff legally, technically completing the Thieves Guild quest without theft. This logical solution circumvents the intended moral dilemma, rewarding players who think beyond the quest's framing. Similarly, Dark Brotherhood contracts targeting faction members can be resolved by getting expelled from factions temporarily, removing the conflict. The game allows these logical exploits, trusting players to find creative solutions to apparent contradictions. NPC schedule exploitation. Understanding NPC schedules allows for optimal quest completion timing. Many quests become trivial when approached during target NPCs' vulnerable moments. Breaking into homes while owners sleep eliminates detection risks. Intercepting traveling NPCs on roads removes witnesses. These schedule-based strategies aren't exploits, but rather intelligent use of game systems. Mastering NPC routines transforms challenging stealth missions into exercises in planning and patience. The game rewards this knowledge acquisition, making experienced players feel genuinely skilled rather than artificially advantaged through character statistics alone. Weather-based quest advantages. Weather conditions affect quest difficulty in subtle ways. Rain reduces NPC vision range, making stealth quests easier. Fog obscures long-range detection, benefiting assassins. Snow reflects light at night, improving visibility for players without penalty. These environmental factors create dynamic difficulty that adapts to current conditions. Waiting for favorable weather before attempting challenging quests demonstrates strategic thinking. The game never explains these meteorological advantages, leaving them as discoveries for observant players who experiment with different environmental conditions. This hidden depth rewards attention to atmospheric detail beyond simple aesthetic appreciation. Quest location, reuse rewards. Returning to completed quest locations often reveals new content. Dungeons repopulate with different enemies or treasure after sufficient time. NPC homes gain new dialogue topics as residents process past events. This environmental persistence makes the world feel genuinely dynamic rather than static. Players who revisit locations discover that their past actions continue reverberating through time. Merchants restock unique items. Quest givers offer new tasks. The world remembers and evolves based on your history, creating an ongoing relationship with Cyrodiil that extends beyond immediate quest completion. The music of Oblivion's thematic warnings. Combat music shifts subtly based on enemy types. Undead encounters trigger eerie strings. Daedric battles introduce discordant brass. These musical cues provide tactical information about threats you're facing. Experienced players learn to identify enemy categories by sound alone, preparing appropriate tactics before visual contact. This musical language enhances immersion while providing gameplay utility. The soundtrack becomes a strategic tool rather than mere ambiance, demonstrating how artistic elements can serve mechanical purposes. Players who pay attention to musical patterns gain advantages over those who ignore the auditory environment. Skull of Corruption's dream mechanics. Vermina's Daedric artifact creates clones of sleeping NPCs, but the clones inherit current equipment and buffs. This allows for interesting tactical applications. Cloning heavily armored NPCs provides temporary tanks. Duplicating mages grants spell support. The artifact's combat utility extends far beyond its apparent dream harvesting theme. Additionally, clones drop real loot when killed, effectively duplicating equipped items. While temporary, this duplication can provide resources in desperate situations. The artifact's depth rewards experimentation and creative thinking about how to apply its unique mechanics. Wobberjack's chaos patterns. Sheogorath's staff appears to transform targets randomly, but subtle patterns exist. The Wobberjack favors transforming enemies into weaker creatures when the player is at low health, suggesting Sheogorath helps those who amuse him. At full health, transformations tend toward more dangerous outcomes, creating chaos rather than assistance. This hidden pattern makes the weapon feel alive with malevolent intelligence rather than purely random. Players who use it extensively notice the health-based correlation, adding mechanical depth to Sheogorath's mad reputation. The staff embodies chaotic, but not entirely unpredictable behavior, matching the mad god's character perfectly. Ring of Khajiit's Night benefits. Meridia's artifact grants chaotic combination enchantments, but they synergize specifically with nighttime gameplay. The Chameleon and Fortify speed buffs benefit stealth characters who operate under cover of darkness. The Night Eye effect activates during night hours automatically, enhancing the ring's thematic connection to feline stealth. Wearing the ring during daytime provides minimal benefits, encouraging players to adopt nocturnal schedules matching Khajiit cultural patterns. This day-night power variation adds strategic depth to equipment choices, making time of day matter beyond simple visibility concerns. Mace of Molag Bal's Soul Trap timing. Molag Bal's artifact soul traps victims on strike, but the trap duration varies based on how the target died. Quick deaths produce weaker soul captures. Prolonged battles where the mace is used repeatedly create stronger captures. This rewards aggressive sustained combat over single powerful strikes, matching Molag Bal's preference for domination over quick kills. The mechanic encourages players to engage deeply with combat rather than alpha striking enemies down, creating more dynamic battles. Understanding this timing improves soul gem management, making the mace valuable beyond its base damage output. Goldbrand's Fire Evolution. Boethia's legendary katana has fire damage that intensifies during prolonged combat. The first strike deals base fire damage, but consecutive hits on the same target increase burning intensity. After 5 consecutive strikes, the target ignites in spectacular flames that damage nearby enemies. This creates a skill-based mechanic, where maintaining offense on single targets rewards you with area damage. The evolution system encourages committed aggression rather than hit-and-run tactics, matching Boethiah's sphere of conflict and destruction. Mastering the consecutive strike mechanic transforms Goldbrand from a powerful weapon into a crowd control tool. Umbra's Cursed Consciousness, the legendary sword. Umbra contains fragments of its wielder's souls, creating a weapon with genuine intelligence. If you use Umbra extensively, NPCs occasionally comment on the sword speaking to you, suggesting auditory hallucinations. The sword's enchantment slowly drains your personality when equipped for extended periods, representing its corrupting influence. These subtle curse mechanics make Umbra feel genuinely dangerous, rather than simply powerful. Players who notice the personality drain must decide whether the sword's power justifies its psychological cost, creating meaningful equipment choice beyond statistical comparison. The curse transforms Umbra from loot into a relationship with a malevolent intelligence. Skeleton Key's Master Lockpick. Evolution. Nocturnal's Unbreakable Lockpick provides more than simple durability. Using the Skeleton Key extensively trains your security skill faster than normal lockpicks. Each successful unlock grants slightly more experience, as the key teaches proper technique while making locks trivial. This hidden training bonus means the key improves you as a thief, rather than simply solving locks for you. Additionally, the key occasionally opens locks above your nominal skill level, expanding your effective range. These benefits make the Skeleton Key genuinely transformative for thief characters beyond its obvious mechanical advantage. Sanguine Rose's Summoning Intelligence. Sanguine's Daedric artifact summons Dremora, who display unusual behavior. Rather than mindlessly attacking, summoned Dremora occasionally taunt enemies before striking, demonstrating personality uncommon in summoned creatures. They sometimes refuse to attack certain targets, suggesting independent judgment. This quirky behavior reflects Sanguine's chaotic nature, creating unpredictable but entertaining combat experiences. The Dremora's intelligence makes them feel like allies rather than tools, adding character to what could be generic summoned fighters. Players who use the Rose frequently develop fondness for their unpredictable Daedric companions. Spellbreaker's Adaptive Defense. Periite's shield reflects spells, but it learns from repeated exposure. After blocking the same spell type multiple times, Spellbreaker's reflection improves, eventually absorbing rather than reflecting. This adaptive defense rewards patient, defensive play over aggressive shield bashing. The learning mechanic creates progression within individual encounters. As the shield becomes increasingly effective, the longer you survive. Understanding this adaptation helps skilled players tank magical enemies that would otherwise overwhelm them, transforming defensive play into a viable combat strategy. Volendrung's Momentum Building. Malakath's legendary Warhammer gains damage as you maintain aggression. Each consecutive hit within 3 seconds of the previous increases damage by a small percentage. At 10 consecutive hits, the hammer reaches maximum damage output, dealing devastating blows. This mechanic rewards aggressive, sustained combat over cautious hit-and-run tactics. Missing or blocking for 3 seconds resets the counter, punishing defensive play. The momentum system makes Volendrung excel in specific playstyles, rewarding players who commit fully to berserker aggression, matching Malakath's sphere. Ogma Infinium's skill selection strategy. Hermaeus Mora's Knowledge Tome offers 3 skill path options, but the optimal choice depends on current skill levels. Choosing paths where your skills are lowest maximizes level up efficiency, as low skills level faster from the bonus. Players who understand leveling mechanics use the Ogma Infinium strategically to accelerate their weakest areas, creating more balanced characters. Conversely, boosting already high skills provides immediate power, but less long-term progression value. This strategic depth makes the tome more than a simple power boost, requiring thoughtful consideration of character development goals. Shivering Isles. Quest integration. While technically expansion content, the Shivering Isles connects to base game quests in subtle ways. NPCs in Cyrodiil occasionally mention Sheogorath's realm if you visited it. Certain quest rewards reference madness mechanics from the Isles. These connections suggest the expansion was always intended as part of Oblivion's complete vision, rather than disconnected add-on content. Players who experience both base game and expansion content discover a more cohesive narrative about Daedric influence in Nirn. The integration demonstrates thoughtful world building that respects players who engage with all available content. Arena progression hidden mechanics. Rising through arena ranks affects more than just title and opponent difficulty. Each rank increases your fame, which influences NPC disposition throughout Cyrodiil. Grand Champion status makes citizens treat you with respect before you even speak. Guards acknowledge your combat prowess with unique dialogue. This social impact of arena success creates non-combat benefits that justify the time investment. Additionally, Arena matches attract spectators whose dialogue changes based on your performance. Winning stylishly earns crowd admiration. Barely surviving creates concerned whispers. This ambient reactivity makes Arena feel like a genuine spectator sport rather than isolated combat instances. Character creation long-term impact. Birth sign and race choices affect quest outcomes in subtle ways beyond base statistics. Certain NPCs react differently to specific races, offering unique dialogue or quest approaches. Birth signs occasionally trigger special events or item spawns related to their celestial nature. These deep integration systems reward thoughtful character creation, making initial choices feel consequential throughout the entire game. Players who experiment with different character builds discover that identical quests play out differently based on fundamental character attributes, encouraging replay value and respecting player investment in character conception. Mages Guild recommendation. Dialogue. Variations. Each of the 7 recommendation quests features unique dialogue options that most players never discover because they take the straightforward approach. During the Anvil recommendation, you can actually question Ariel Durard about why the Mages Guild uses associates as bait instead of trained battle mages, and she'll admit that the guild considers new members expendable assets whose loss won't significantly impact operations. This cynical admission reveals institutional callousness that contradicts the guild's public image of scholarly cooperation. In Bravil, if you complete Varon Vamori's task with maximum disposition without using charm spells, he confesses that his infatuation with Ardeline stems from childhood trauma related to abandonment, adding psychological depth to what seems like a petty theft. The Bruma recommendation allows you to confront Volinaro about the dangers of sending inexperienced mages into Oblivion-corrupted areas, and he'll defend the practice by citing historical precedent from the guild's founding, when apprentices routinely died during training exercises. These optional conversations expose the Mages Guild's darker operational philosophy, where individual lives matter less than institutional preservation and the advancement of magical knowledge through any means necessary. The Cheydinhal Ring Recovery Timeline. Falcar's Ring of Burden quest operates on a hidden timer that tracks how long you take to complete the recovery. If you retrieve the ring within 1 hour of accepting the quest, Falcar's disposition towards you increases significantly, though he never explicitly acknowledges your efficiency. Taking more than 3 days triggers unique dialogue where Dietzen questions whether you're truly committed to the guild, suggesting that simple tasks shouldn't require extensive time investment. The ring itself bears magical properties beyond the burden enchantment that Falcar mentions. If examined closely using detect enchantment spells, the ring pulses with necromantic energy, hinting at Falcar's true allegiances long before the questline reveals his connection to Manamako. The well where the ring fell isn't actually a well at all, but rather a sealed entrance to ancient Ayleid tunnels beneath Cheydinhal that the guild deliberately filled to prevent unauthorized exploration. Dietzen knows this history, but won't share it with associates, maintaining the fiction of a simple well to discourage curiosity. The ring's placement at the bottom serves as a test of both your magical ability and your willingness to follow instructions without questioning suspicious circumstances. Coral's Irana's secret motivations. Irana's quest to obtain the fingers of the Mountain Book contains layers of deception that the game never fully explains. Her obsession with the book stems not from academic interest, but from a personal vendetta against Tychius, who humiliated her during their apprenticeship by publicly demonstrating that her research into finger-based casting techniques was based on misinterpreted Ayleid texts. The book itself contains deliberately false information that Tychius created specifically to trap researchers who would steal rather than collaborate, making it an elaborate decades-long prank. If you steal the book as Irana requests, she eventually discovers the deception and quietly leaves Coral in shame, though the game never explicitly shows this departure. The guild doesn't punish you for the theft because Tychius finds the entire situation hilarious and considers it poetic justice that Irana's dishonesty led to her own humiliation. However, if you convince Irana to negotiate with Tychius honestly, she'll receive access to his genuine research, which leads to breakthroughs in restoration magic that the guild quietly implements without crediting either researcher. This hidden outcome demonstrates how academic politics within the guild often supersede actual magical advancement. Skingrad's Earthor vampire connection. The missing mage Earthor, who you rescue from Bleak Flats cave, has deeper connections to Skingrad's vampire population than the quest reveals. Before his capture by bandits, Earthor was investigating rumors of vampire activity in the area at the request of Adrian Berene, who suspected her husband's unusual behavior. His research notes, which can be found in the cave if you search thoroughly, indicate he'd identified Count Hasseldor as a vampire weeks before his disappearance. The bandits who captured him were actually hired by vampire hunters who wanted to interrogate Earthor about his findings, but they grabbed the wrong researcher in the confusion. When you return Earthor to the guild, he's unusually quiet about his ordeal, which most players attribute to trauma. But careful observation reveals he's terrified of revealing what he learned about Skingrad's true power structure. If you have high disposition with him after the rescue, he hints that some knowledge is too dangerous to share, especially when it concerns those who control cities from the shadows. The guild leadership knows about Earthor's research, but chooses not to pursue it, demonstrating their political pragmatism when dealing with powerful supernatural entities. Earthor eventually leaves the guild entirely and moves to a remote tower where he continues research into vampirism, though this happens off-screen and can only be discovered through dialogue with other guild members months later. Leowyn's Kalthar mental breakdown reality. Kudai's friend Kalthar, trapped in a nightmare realm during the Through a Nightmare Darkly quest, wasn't randomly attacked by the rogue mage Henantir's experiment. Investigation of Henantir's tower reveals correspondence suggesting Kalthar volunteered to test the Dreamworld apparatus after experiencing recurring nightmares that prevented sleep for weeks. The nightmares themselves were side effects of a failed enchantment experiment Kalthar conducted, attempting to permanently enhance his magical abilities by binding his consciousness to a Welkin stone. The attempt partially succeeded, giving him enhanced magicka regeneration, but also tethering his mind to Aetherius in ways that made normal sleep impossible. Henantir's Dreamworld seemed like a potential solution, offering controlled unconscious states where Kalthar could finally rest, but the unstable nature of the apparatus trapped him in manifestations of his existing trauma. When you rescue him, the game presents it as a complete success, but careful observation reveals Kalthar now requires regular doses of sleeping potions to prevent the nightmares from returning. He never fully recovers from the experience, and eventually leaves the guild to pursue less dangerous magical research, though most guild members assume he simply lost his nerve. The Archmage Council's impossible numbers. By the time you complete the Mages Guild quest line, the council that's supposed to govern the organization consists of exactly 2 members, you as Archmage and Raminus Polus. The game treats this as normal, but it creates an impossibly small governing body for an organization that spans the entire province. The original council members died throughout the quest line in attacks orchestrated by Manimarco, and the game never addresses how the guild intends to replace them, or whether the 2-person council can legitimately make binding decisions. Dialogue with Raminus reveals he expects you to appoint new council members, but the game provides no mechanism to actually do this, leaving the guild's governance in permanent limbo. Furthermore, the deaths of so many council members should trigger massive political repercussions across Cyrodiil, as each represented different regions and magical specialties. But citizens continued discussing the guild as if nothing changed. This oversight reveals that the guild quest line was designed around personal narrative rather than organizational coherence, creating a conclusion that feels hollow when you consider the broader implications. The 2-person council technically lacks the authority to enforce guild policies, expel members, or make binding contracts, yet the game treats your authority as absolute. Staff creation material symbolism. The quest requiring you to create your personal mage's staff involves gathering materials that carry symbolic weight related to your future role in the guild. The wood chosen for the staff comes from specific tree species associated with different schools of magic, though the game never explains this connection. Oak represents stability and defensive magic. Maple symbolizes versatility and illusion. Birch connects to restoration and healing, while yew tree wood links to destruction magic and offensive spellcasting. The dragon's tongue root required for binding represents the voice of authority, as archmages historically used their staves as symbols of the right to speak for the organization. The unrefined green mote, though presented as simply a focus for magical energy, actually attunes the staff to Aetherius in ways that make spellcasting feel more natural, reducing the mental effort required for complex incantations. Bothiel's knowledge of staff construction comes from ancient texts she discovered in the Mystic Archives, texts that predate the Mages Guild's founding and suggest staff creation was originally a religious ritual rather than merely practical tool crafting. The specific combination of materials you gather creates a staff uniquely aligned to your magical signature. explaining why other mages can't effectively use your staff even though similar staves exist throughout Cyrodiil. Ulterior motives. Book conspiracy. The Necromancer's Moonbook you retrieve from Count Hasseldor contains information that the Count deliberately wanted Hannibal Travern to possess. The Count, being a vampire himself, maintains complex relationships with necromancers who view vampires as kindred spirits in defying death's natural order. By providing the book, Hasildor feeds Travern information about Black Soul gem creation, while simultaneously warning necromancers that the guild is investigating their operations, allowing his allies to prepare countermeasures. The book's contents describe the creation process in enough detail to be useful, but omit critical steps that would allow the guild to actually replicate the technique, making it valuable intelligence that's ultimately incomplete. Travern never realizes he's being manipulated, interpreting the Count's cooperation as fear of guild retribution rather than calculated misdirection. The Count's Chamberlain, Hal Lears, knows about this deception, but remains loyal to her employer, occasionally dropping hints to perceptive players that the situation is more complex than it appears. The vampire hunters you're asked to remove from Skingrad are actually legitimate researchers tracking necromancer activities, making your assistance to the Count actively harmful to anti-necromancer efforts, though the quest presents it as protecting innocent citizens from paranoid zealots. Vatican's Aeliad Puzzle. Linguistic depth. The puzzle in Vatican ruins requires casting specific spell types at a central pillar, but the Aeliad inscriptions explaining the solution contain layered meanings that the Mages Guild researchers completely misinterpret. The symbols don't just indicate spell schools, but describe a philosophical approach to magic, where fire represents passion and transformation. Frost symbolizes contemplation and preservation. Damage Magicka shows the destructive aspect of denying power, while Fortify Magicka represents the generosity of empowering others. The Aeliads designed this sequence as a test of character rather than mere magical ability, expecting only those who understood the balance between destruction and creation, taking and giving, to access the deeper chambers. Modern mages view it as an arbitrary lock mechanism, missing the intended lesson about responsible magic use. Sculliel's translation of the inscriptions focuses on the mechanical aspects while ignoring the ethical framework the Aeliads embedded in their writing. The ancient elven helm you retrieve from the ruins responds to the wearer's intentions, strengthening spells cast with altruistic motives while weakening selfish magic. Though this property isn't documented in any guild research, the Aeliads anticipated that future magic users would lose sight of ethical considerations, designing their ruins as teaching tools for those capable of learning from the past. Necromancer's Moon. Hidden mechanics. The Black Soul gem creation requires specific astronomical conditions that most players never fully understand, because the quest simplifies the explanation. The Necromancer's Moon isn't actually a separate celestial body, but rather a specific alignment between Nirn's moons and the constellation of the Revenant, which creates a shadow in Aetherius that weakens the barriers protecting mortal souls. This alignment occurs unpredictably, based on complex calculations that necromancers guard jealously, making the timing more art than science. The game triggers the event on a fixed schedule for gameplay reasons, but lore-wise, predicting when Manimarco's moon will rise requires astronomical expertise and magical sensing capabilities beyond most practitioners. The ritual to create Black Soul gems doesn't actually capture souls differently from normal soul gems. Instead, it temporarily convinces the gem that humanoid souls are equivalent to creature souls. bypassing built-in protections that Rayman-era mages installed to prevent this exact exploitation. Falcar's knowledge of this process reveals his long-term involvement with necromantic research, as mastering these techniques requires years of study and experimentation. The Mages Guild's inability to prevent Black Soul gem creation even after learning about it demonstrates fundamental limitations in their understanding of soul magic's underlying principles. Information or apprehension hidden choice. The quest asking you to decide whether to return Mucianus Alias to the guild or free him presents a false dichotomy that obscures a third option most players never discover. If you have sufficiently high mercantile skill, you can actually negotiate with both the necromancers and the battle mages to arrange a prisoner exchange where everyone gets what they want. The necromancers receive supplies they need for non-lethal research. The guild gets Mucianus back alive, and you broker a temporary truce that prevents unnecessary deaths. This option requires specific dialogue choices and successful persuasion checks that most players never attempt because the quest frames it as a simple binary choice. Choosing this path reveals that some necromancers genuinely believe in their research's value rather than being purely evil practitioners, complicating the guild questline's straightforward good versus evil narrative. Mucianus himself knows about the possibility of negotiation, but won't suggest it because he's been tortured and fears the necromancers will retaliate if he appears too cooperative. The battle mages who would otherwise attack have orders to eliminate necromancers on sight, but can be convinced to hold back if you invoke emergency protocols that technically allow the guild to negotiate with enemies during hostage situations. Successfully negotiating this peaceful resolution actually angers Hannibal Traven, who sees it as legitimizing necromancy and weakening the guild's moral stance. Traven's suicide magical implications. Hannibal Traven's sacrifice to power the colossal Black Soul gem carries implications that the quest glosses over in favor of emotional impact. By trapping his own soul in the gem, Traven doesn't just provide power for your confrontation with Manimarco. He fundamentally corrupts his own essence in ways that contradict everything he stood for. The anti-necromancy crusader's soul becomes the ultimate necromantic tool, suggesting either desperate hypocrisy or a calculated decision that pragmatism sometimes requires abandoning principles. The ritual Traven performs doesn't simply trap his soul, but fragments it, with pieces bound to the gem, other pieces dispersing into Aetherius, and fragments remaining in the Arcane University, where his presence can still be felt in certain areas. Guild members report sensing his consciousness in the council chambers, suggesting his sacrifice didn't fully succeed in containing his entire soul, or that soul magic operates on principles the guild fundamentally misunderstands. Using the empowered gem against Manimarco means channeling Traven's corrupted essence, making you complicit in defiling a colleague's soul, though the game presents it as honoring his sacrifice. This moral complexity reveals tensions in the guild's opposition to necromancy, when they'll use soul magic for their own purposes, but condemn others for similar practices. Manimarco's intentional defeat. The final confrontation with Manimarco contains hints that the King of Worms deliberately orchestrated his apparent defeat for purposes beyond the player's understanding. When you activate the colossal Black Soul gem in his presence, Manimarco shows no surprise or alarm, suggesting he anticipated this exact scenario. His staff drops after his death, but the enchantments on it continue functioning indefinitely, unusual for items that typically lose power when their creator dies. Dialogue before the battle has Manimarco mentioning that mortals cannot comprehend lichdom's true nature, hinting that what appears as death might be transformation or relocation to another plane. The King of Worms' soul never appears in the soul gem, despite the weapon specifically designed to capture it, suggesting either his soul escaped or was never present in the physical body you fought. Guild researchers studying the aftermath note disturbing similarities between Manimarco's defeat and historical records of previous times powerful necromancers died, only to return centuries later with new identities. The questline's neat conclusion, where good triumphs over evil, obscures the possibility that Manimarco achieved goals beyond simple power acquisition, using the guild's opposition as a tool to accomplish something the game never reveals. Archmage Quarters. Hidden features. The Archmage's quarters you gain access to after completing the questline contain several features that only reveal themselves after extended use. The bookshelf rearranges itself overnight when you're not present, suggesting either enchantments designed to organize knowledge or lingering consciousness from previous archmages still trying to maintain order. Books you read and replace on the shelves occasionally appear with annotations in handwriting that isn't yours, containing insights about spells or magical theory that previous archmages discovered. The enchanting altar's power fluctuates based on celestial alignments, becoming significantly stronger during specific astronomical conditions that aren't explained in any guild documentation. The personal chest in your quarters connects to the enchanted ingredient chest in the basement, but items stored in your personal chest occasionally multiply or transmute into related substances, suggesting the storage system has properties beyond what guild researchers documented. The bed provides rest that recovers magicka faster than normal sleep, an enchantment so subtle that most players never notice the accelerated regeneration. Windows in the quarters show views of the Imperial City that don't quite match the tower's actual position, suggesting illusions designed to provide inspiring vistas rather than accurate geography, a small vanity from centuries of archmages who wanted pleasant views regardless of reality. The enchanted ingredient chest mechanics. The special chest in the Archmage's tower basement that generates alchemical ingredients operates on complex magical principles that the guild doesn't fully understand, because they inherited it from the tower's original builders. The chest doesn't create ingredients from nothing, but rather summons them from across Cyrodiil, essentially stealing small quantities from merchants, alchemists, and natural sources throughout the province. This explains why the chest generates exactly the ingredients you need most frequently. It's reading your usage patterns and targeting sources where those materials are abundant. The theft is so widely distributed that no individual victim notices the loss, making it an ingeniously designed system for acquiring supplies without obvious criminal activity. However, this means the Archmage unknowingly participates in ongoing theft, contradicting the guild's public stance on ethical behavior. The chest can't generate rare or unique ingredients because the summoning spell won't target items that removing might be noticed, showing that its creators programmed moral limitations into the theft. Over centuries of use, the chest has developed a form of limited consciousness, beginning to make decisions about what to summon based on its predictions of guild needs, rather than just responding to access patterns. Raminus knows about the chest's true function, but doesn't share this information, recognizing that many archmages would refuse to use it if they understood the ethical implications. Mages Guild suspension ingredient logic. The specific ingredients you must gather when suspended from the guild carry symbolic meanings that reveal how the organization views different offenses. theft requires collecting dragon's tongue and redwood, plants associated with fire and blood respectively, representing the burning shame of betrayal and the price paid in trust. These ingredients are deliberately rare and difficult to harvest in quantity, forcing offenders to invest significant time in reflection while gathering them. Murder demands vampire dust and Daedra hearts, connecting the crime to entities that exist outside natural life cycles, suggesting the guild views killing as a perversion of reality's fundamental order. The quantities required, 20 of each, symbolize the 20 fingers and toes of a whole person, representing restoration of completeness after violation. The suspension system doesn't actually need these ingredients for any specific purpose. Raminus distributes them to poor alchemists free of charge after you deliver them, making the collection purely punitive and symbolic rather than productive. This reveals an interesting philosophical approach where the guild values symbolic justice and penance over practical restitution. Third offenses resulting in permanent expulsion aren't about the guild being unwilling to forgive, but recognizing that someone who repeatedly violates rules hasn't internalized the lessons the symbolic punishments were meant to teach. Guild Hall, specialization, hidden benefits. Each mage's guild hall specializes in a specific school of magic, providing subtle benefits to members who spend time studying in those locations. Working on destruction magic while residing in Cheydinhall makes learning new spells in that school slightly faster, though the effect is so minor that most players never notice the accelerated skill gains. Bravel's specialization in restoration means healing potions created using their laboratory equipment are marginally more effective, reflecting the staff's expertise influencing the crafting process. These benefits aren't explained in any dialogue or documentation, because guild members consider them obvious facts of magical practice rather than special advantages worth mentioning. The specializations also affect the types of spell tomes sold in each hall, with specialized locations offering rarer spells in their chosen school, but limited selection in others. This creates strategic reasons to visit specific halls for particular needs, rather than treating them as interchangeable locations. The lack of specialization in Bruma makes it a generalist hub, where you can find average selection across all schools, but no particular excellence, reflecting the hall's role as a way station for traveling mages rather than a research center. Guild members who train exclusively at one specialized hall develop distinctive casting styles that experts can identify by observing spell execution, suggesting the specializations influence technique beyond just knowledge. Ayleid statue collection background. The 10 Ancestors quest for Umbacano involves collecting Ayleid statues that represent historical figures from the Elven Empire, but the quest never explains why these particular statues matter. Each statue depicts an Ayleid ruler who contributed to their civilization's downfall through specific failures: the Etherian king who overextended his borders, the Meridian queen who alienated vital allies, the Twilight prince who allowed corruption to infest his court. Umbacano collects them not as art, but as warnings, studying their failures to avoid similar mistakes in his own pursuit of power. The statues themselves retain faint magical properties connecting them to the individuals they represent, occasionally emitting sounds or sensations reflecting their subjects' emotional states at the moment of greatest failure. Umbacano's notes describe hearing weeping from the Sarkle Prince statue, and a feeling cold dread emanating from the Hestra Queen, suggesting the statues are more like soul containers than mere representations. The collection's completion triggers events in Umbacano's storyline, because bringing all 10 together creates a sympathetic, magical connection between their failures, essentially cursing anyone who possesses them all. Umbacano believes this curse will help him avoid the ancestors' mistakes by making him viscerally feel the consequences of similar choices. But the magic actually amplifies his existing flaws rather than teaching lessons. The sarcophagus trap mechanics. During nothing you can possess, the crown you retrieve triggers a trap that kills Umbacano through mechanisms the quest never fully explains. The crown doesn't simply release poisonous gas or collapse the ceiling. It activates alien defensive magic that specifically targets those who approach with greed rather than reverence. Umbacano's obsessive desire for alien artifacts makes him especially vulnerable to this trap, which reads his intentions and executes him accordingly. If you had approached with different motivations, academic interest, religious reverence, or even simple curiosity without avarice, the trap wouldn't have activated at all. This means you inadvertently caused Umbacano's death by allowing his greed to guide the approach rather than warning him about potential spiritual contamination. The crown itself becomes inert after triggering the trap, its protective magic expended, which explains why you can safely recover it from his corpse afterward. Ayleid crafters designed these traps with remarkable sophistication, capable of distinguishing between different types of tomb raiders based on motivations, rather than just detecting unauthorized entry. This reflects their civilization's advanced understanding of consciousness and intention as measurable magical forces, knowledge that modern mages have completely lost. Fin Gleam Helmet. Origins. The Fin Gleam diving helmet found in Anvil Harbor has a backstory that careful investigation can piece together from scattered clues around the city. The helmet belonged to a naval engineer who developed it for underwater salvage operations but died testing an improved version that malfunctioned, leaving the functional prototype at the bottom of the bay. His widow placed it there deliberately after his death, believing that making the helmet accessible to anyone who needed underwater breathing would honor his memory better than keeping it as a museum piece. Local fishermen know about the helmet's location and occasionally direct adventurers toward it, with cryptic hints about breathing treasures in the deep. But most players find it through random exploration rather than following these clues. The helmet's enchantment doesn't actually create breathable air, but rather transmutes water into oxygen directly at the user's mouth, a technique that should work indefinitely, but has a hidden flaw that caused the engineer's death. The improved version he tested attempted to transmute at higher volumes for deeper dives, but created oxygen so rapidly it caused combustion, killing him instantly. The functional prototype at the bottom of the bay works perfectly at normal depths, but becomes increasingly dangerous the deeper you dive, though the game never actually implements this limitation. The Rosethorn Cache map clues. The treasure hunt leading to Rosethorn Hall's hidden cache supposedly requires a map, but the actual clues exist throughout Cyrodiil in forms most players never recognize as related to the quest. Books scattered across libraries contain poems that reference landmarks along the path to the treasure, disguised as nature poetry rather than obvious directions. Citizens in different cities occasionally mention old Rosethorn family stories during random conversations, providing pieces of the family history that explain why the cache was hidden and what it contains. The map itself isn't actually necessary if you pay attention to these environmental storytelling elements, making the entire quest completable through ambient lore rather than following explicit instructions. This design reflects a philosophy. where players willing to engage deeply with world-building receive rewards that more casual players might miss. The cache itself contains not just valuable items, but family correspondence revealing that the Rosethorn heir hid the treasure after being falsely accused of theft, planning to return when their name was cleared, but dying before achieving vindication. The letters show an increasingly desperate person watching their legacy crumble while maintaining hope for eventual justice, adding emotional weight to what could have been just a simple treasure hunt. The forlorn watchman's identity. The spirit haunting the waterfront who tasks you with recovering his remains has a specific identity that investigation can reveal beyond the quest's basic information. The forlorn watchman was Grantham Blakely, first mate on the merchant vessel Emma May, who was murdered by his captain over disputes about illegal cargo that Blakely refused to transport. The captain threw his body overboard, weighted with chains after a suspicious accident, officially recorded as a tragic fall in stormy weather. Blakely's spirit remains bound to the area because he died with urgent, unfinished business warning authorities about the captain's smuggling operations, though that captain died years ago in unrelated circumstances. When you recover his remains, the quest frames it as providing peace through proper burial, but careful observation reveals his spirit doesn't actually depart after the quest concludes. Players who return to the waterfront on foggy nights occasionally glimpse his ghost still watching the waters, suggesting either the burial didn't fully resolve his restlessness, or that his connection to the location extends beyond his personal death. The flowers that appear near his remains after completion represent offerings from descendants who learned about their ancestors' fate through your intervention, though this connection is never explicitly stated. The quest's resolution provides closure for the player, but reveals that some spiritual wounds can't fully heal, even with proper burial and recognition. Ghost ship fortunes hold mechanisms. The haunted ship in Anvil Harbour operates on possession magic that most players don't fully understand, because the quest focuses on retrieving the crystal ball rather than explaining the haunting. The ghosts aboard Fortune's Hold aren't actually the spirits of dead sailors, but rather magical constructs created by the ship's cargo. A cursed Ayleid artifact that generates phantom crew members to protect itself. The crystal ball you retrieve for Varulai has been absorbing magical energy from this artifact, which explains both why it's valuable and why the ghosts guard it so fiercely. When you remove the ball, you're not actually ending the haunting, but rather removing evidence that would prove the ship's curse to authorities, who would then have to deal with properly neutralizing the Ayleid artifact. Varulai knows about the ship's true nature, but deliberately sends you to recover her ball rather than warning maritime authorities, valuing her property over public safety. The ghosts themselves don't register as undead to detection spells because they're essentially magical automatons rather than reanimated souls, though they're convincing enough that everyone treats them as genuine spirits. The ship's owners maintain insurance claims based on the haunting, profiting from the curse, while ensuring it never gets properly investigated or resolved, creating an ongoing supernatural hazard in Anvil's harbour that persists after your quest involvement. The Siren's Deception Leadership. The all-female gang targeting married men in Braville has organisational structure that the quest never fully explores because it focuses on stopping their operations rather than understanding them. Their leader operates according to a code of ethics where they only target men who've demonstrated willingness to cheat on their spouses, viewing their thefts as punishment for marital infidelity. This makes them vigilante thieves rather than purely criminal opportunists, though the law doesn't recognize this distinction. The gang maintains detailed records of their marks' domestic situations, investigating targets thoroughly before approaching them to ensure they only rob actual cheaters rather than innocent men in bad relationships. These records, discoverable if you search their hideout carefully, reveal tragic stories of domestic abuse, emotional neglect, and serial adultery among Brazil's supposedly respectable married population. The gang leader herself is a former victim of spousal betrayal, who organized the group after local authorities dismissed her complaints about her husband's theft of her property during their separation. She views the gang's activities as both revenge and community service, removing resources from unfaithful partners while enriching women whom society disadvantages in divorce proceedings. The quest asks you to stop them, without examining whether their activities might be justified responses to systemic injustices, presenting a moral complexity that the straightforward quest resolution doesn't address. Hackdirt's Underground. Truth. The town of Hackdirt that imprisons Dharma worships neither the Nine Divines nor the Daedric Princes, but something older and more fundamental to Nirn's nature. The Deep Ones they serve aren't actually separate entities, but manifestations of the primal chaos that existed before creation, representing dissolution and return to primordial unity. Their religious practices involve attempting to physically transform into amphibious beings through magical rituals and selective breeding, explaining the citizens' unusual appearance and behavior. The town's isolation isn't just geographical, but temporal. Magic surrounding Hackdirt keeps it partially detached from normal time flow, which is why the residents seem anachronistic and why the town's technology and social structures feel centuries out of date. When you rescue Dharma, you're not just saving her from kidnapping, but preventing her forced integration into this transformation process, which would have turned her into one of them over time. The caverns beneath the town connect to vast underground networks that extend across Cyrodiil, suggesting Hackdirt is just one surface manifestation of a much larger subterranean civilization. The game presents Hackdirt as an isolated cult, rather than revealing it as an outpost of something far more extensive and ancient. Citizens who die defending their town don't fear death, because their theology teaches that death releases them into the primal waters, where they'll merge with the Deep Ones they worship, making them genuinely suicidal opponents who welcome your attacks. Unfriendly competition supply source. Thorinir's ability to undercut other merchants stems from a supply chain with darker origins than the quest reveals. He doesn't just receive stolen goods from his source. He's unknowingly selling items taken from murdered travelers on the roads around the Imperial City. His supplier, Agamir, poses as a legitimate wholesaler, while actually being a serial killer who robs his victims and disguises the goods' origins through a network of fences. The other merchants oppose Thorinir not just because of economic competition, but because some recognize specific items in his inventory that belong to missing friends or relatives, though they can't prove the connection. When you expose Agamir's grave robbing, you're actually revealing his secondary income source. His primary crime is murder, with grave robbing being merely opportunistic addition to his killings. The quest allows Thorinir to escape legal consequences because he genuinely didn't know about his supplier's crimes. But this means a merchant who profited from murder continues operating without facing justice. The goods in Thorinir's shop, after the quest completion, still came from Agamir's killings. They're just old inventory rather than new stolen property, meaning customers unknowingly purchase items taken from corpses. The game treats this as an acceptable resolution because Thorinir stops receiving new stolen goods, ignoring the blood money he's already earned and the families who lost both loved ones and their possessions. The Killing Field. Odil Farm Defense. The goblin attacks on the Odil farm aren't random monster spawns, but rather calculated retaliation for the family's expansion onto traditional goblin hunting grounds. The Odils know they're encroaching on goblin territory, but consider it their right as civilized people to displace primitive creatures, showing the game's subtle commentary on colonialism. The brothers you help defend the farm are experienced fighters who could handle the goblins alone, but want to use the attacks as training exercises, essentially turning real combat into sport. Your assistance isn't actually necessary for the farm's survival, but rather makes the defense easier and less risky for the Odils, who reward you for convenience rather than genuine heroism. The goblins attacking the farm include tribes that previously coexisted peacefully with nearby farms, until the Odils specifically targeted their leadership through hired adventurers, creating the conflict that the quest asks you to resolve through further violence. This creates a cycle where human expansion provokes creature retaliation, which justifies further expansion, all presented as heroic defense rather than aggressive colonization. The quest never offers the option to negotiate peace or establish boundaries, assuming that goblin life has less value than human property. Rights. After your intervention, the goblins either avoid the area entirely or get completely exterminated, neither outcome acknowledging that they had legitimate grievances about their territory being stolen. Whom Gods Annoy, Cursed House. The house in Anvil plagued by supernatural problems carries a curse that operates on more complex principles than the quest explains. The paranormal activity isn't caused by Daedric intervention, but rather by the house itself being built on a location where the boundaries between Mundus and Oblivion are naturally thin, creating unpredictable magical effects. Rosentia Galenus attracted the Daedra Mephala attention not through any specific action, but simply by living in a space where the prince could easily reach through, making her an innocent victim of cosmic bad luck. The foul smell pervading the house doesn't emanate from a specific source, but rather represents reality itself, decaying where dimensional boundaries overlap, creating an area where physical laws don't function consistently. When you cleanse the house through the quest, you're not actually solving the fundamental problem, but rather temporarily reinforcing the barriers between planes, which will eventually weaken again. This means future occupants will eventually face similar issues, though Rosentia either doesn't know this or deliberately conceals it to maintain her property value. The Daedra rats infesting the house aren't conjured creatures, but actual rats that wandered into the dimensional overlap and got transformed by exposure to Oblivion's energies, suggesting that reality warping effects aren't limited to obviously magical beings. The Wayward Night Count's son. Farwul Indaris, the Count's son. You escort through the Oblivion Gate represents a complicated case of privileged incompetence that the quest handles with surprising nuance. He genuinely believes in heroism and wants to protect Cheydinhal, but lacks both the skill and judgment to effectively pursue these goals, making him dangerous to himself and others. The Knights of the Thorn he founded are largely enabled by his father's money and position, allowing them to acquire equipment and authority they haven't earned through competence. When you escort them through the Oblivion Gate, you're not witnessing noble heroism, but rather privileged amateurs stumbling through a crisis they're completely unprepared to handle. Farwul's survival depends entirely on your intervention, Yet he credits his own leadership and courage, demonstrating the kind of delusional self-assessment that wealth and status enable. His father, the Count, knows his son is incompetent, but uses his position to ensure Farwell's adventures don't result in consequences that would teach him realistic self-assessment. The quest rewards you for enabling this system, providing payment for saving a nobleman's son, rather than questioning whether protecting the irresponsible from their choices serves anyone's interests. After the rescue, Farwell continues leading the Knights of the Thorn, having learned nothing from the experience except that expensive equipment and other people's intervention can save him from his bad judgment. Canvass the Castle's social engineering. The quest to canvass opinions about the Fighters Guild leadership demonstrates sophisticated social manipulation that most players don't recognize. Modrin Orin asks you to gather intelligence that he already possesses through his own sources, using your investigation to create a paper trail that makes his accusations against Velena Donton seem like independent findings rather than personal vendetta. The Fighters Guild members you interview have complex opinions about leadership that your limited dialogue options reduce to simple for or against positions, eliminating nuance and making the conflict seem more black and white than it actually is. Velena's supporters have legitimate concerns about Orin's methods and his willingness to violate guild traditions, but the quest frames all opposition to him as either corruption or misguided loyalty. When you report back to Orin, he uses your findings not just to challenge Velena, but to split the guild into factions, weakening an organization that should be united, all in service of his personal desire for revenge against Blackwood Company. The quest presents this as gathering information, but you're actually participating in a calculated campaign to destabilize leadership, and the game never acknowledges the damage this internal conflict causes to the guild's ability to serve its clients. Azura's Shrine vampiric implications. The quest for Azura's Star involves retrieving it from a vampire den, but the connection between vampires and Azura worship carries significance the quest never explains. Azura's sphere includes twilight, the boundary between day and night, making her naturally attractive to vampires who exist in the boundary between life and death. Some vampire cults worship Azura as the mother of roses, believing she offers paths to transcend their cursed state without losing their power. The vampire who stole the star sought to use it for research into purifying souls corrupted by vampirism, representing desperate hope rather than simple theft. When you kill the vampire to retrieve the star, you're destroying potentially groundbreaking research into curing vampirism without the painful and humiliating process the standard cure requires. Azura doesn't actually want the star returned for its own sake, but rather uses the quest to test whether you'll value her favor over investigating the vampire's potentially beneficial research. The Daedric Prince appreciates when mortals prioritize divine commands over rational self-interest, making the quest more about demonstrating devotion than recovering stolen property. The star itself is basically indestructible and could have been retrieved without violence through negotiation, but Azura's quest deliberately requires killing to test your willingness to commit murder on her behalf. Boethia's Goldbrand Tournament Deaths. The tournament of 10 bloods required to earn Goldbrand involves killing warriors who have voluntarily entered the competition, but investigation reveals darker truths. Many combatants enter not because they seek glory, but because they're desperate, coerced, or deceived about the tournament's nature and their chances of survival. Boethia's followers recruit from debtors, criminals facing execution, and social outcasts. offering the tournament as an apparent path to salvation when it's actually certain death for all but the strongest. The warriors you kill to complete the quest include people fighting for their families' debts to be forgiven, people promised their criminal records would be expunged, and people told they'd receive healing magic for terminal illnesses if they won. None of these promises were ever intended to be kept. They're just recruitment tools to provide fresh victims for Boethiah's amusement. The tournament structure ensures you'll kill people who don't deserve death and whose only crime was being vulnerable to false promises. Yet the quest presents these killings as honorable combat. Boethiah values these manipulations and sees no contradiction between hosting a tournament theoretically based on warrior honor, while actually running a death trap for the desperate. Your willingness to kill regardless of your victim's circumstances demonstrates the exact moral flexibility that Boethiah desires in followers. Meridia's Necromancer Purge Scope. The quest to cleanse Meridia's shrine of necromancers involves more extensive moral complications than its straightforward presentation suggests. The necromancers occupying the shrine aren't random evil wizards, but actually researchers who believe Meridia's association with life energies makes her shrine the perfect location for studying death magic, viewing it as a complementary rather than opposed force. Their research includes attempts to communicate with the dead to learn what lies beyond mortality, work that could potentially prove or disprove various religious claims about afterlife, making it threatening to religious authorities beyond just being evil. Meridia wants them removed, not because they're harming anyone, but because their mere presence contradicts her aesthetic preference for light and life, making this a cosmetic rather than moral imperative. When you slaughter the necromancers, you're destroying potentially valuable research based on a Daedric prince's personal tastes, rather than any actual harm they've caused. The quest rewards you with a powerful artifact, but the necromancers never actually injured anyone, making you a mass murderer for hire working on behalf of an otherworldly entity whose values align with mainstream religion purely by coincidence. Meridia's opposition to undead stems from aesthetic disgust rather than moral principle, yet the quest presents your violence as righteous cleansing. Namira's Forgotten One's Feast. The quest for Namira's ring requires participating in a cannibalistic feast that the game presents as disturbing but doesn't fully explore the participants' motivations. The Forgotten Ones who worship Namira aren't insane cultists, but rather social outcasts who've been rejected by mainstream society for various reasons, including disease, disability, poverty, and criminal records. Their worship of Namira represents acceptance of their outcast status and embrace of practices that normal society finds repulsive, creating identity and community where they've been denied both. The cannibalism isn't primarily religious, but rather practical. Eating the dead prevents starvation when society refuses to allow them legitimate ways to obtain food, with religious significance layered onto survival necessity. When you join their feast to obtain the ring, you're not witnessing pure evil, but rather seeing how systemic rejection creates communities that embrace horrifying practices because they've been denied alternatives. The quest never questions whether improving social support systems might address the root causes creating these desperate communities, instead treating them as innately corrupted individuals who deserve divine punishment. Namira's favor rewards you for participating without judgment, representing acceptance of outcasts that mainstream society refuses to provide, making her the dark mirror of conventional charity that helps the deserving poor while abandoning those deemed too broken or dangerous to save. Periite's Plague. Theological implications. The quest to restore Peryite's followers from their catatonic state reveals theological complexity about the nature of Daedric worship. The cultists aren't trapped accidentally, but chose to project their souls to oblivion as a form of communion with their prince, intending a brief spiritual journey that unexpectedly became permanent. Peryite himself doesn't view their situation as problematic, because time in oblivion flows differently than Mundus, and from his perspective, they're exactly where they chose to be, engaged in worship that happens to look like comatose helplessness from an external viewpoint. When you rescue them by retrieving their souls, you're actually disrupting their religious experience based on outsider assumptions about what constitutes well-being, imposing your values on people who deliberately chose a path you find disturbing. The cultists never asked for rescue and might actually resent your intervention, though the game doesn't show their reaction after awakening. Peryite rewards you not because you helped his followers, but because your actions demonstrate the kind of busybody interference in others' choices that Peryite finds endlessly entertaining in mortals. The quest assumes that material welfare matters more than spiritual experience, rejecting the cultists' religious choices as invalid without ever engaging with their actual beliefs or motivations. Sanguine's Rose Moral Quandary. The quest to obtain Sanguine's Rose involves a drunken evening that ends with you waking in a temple owing money for property damage, but investigation reveals darker implications. The magic Sanguine uses doesn't just make you drunk, but actually suppresses your inhibitions and moral judgment while enhancing aggression, essentially removing your ability to make ethical choices. Actions you take while under this influence aren't truly your choices, but rather Sanguine puppeting you toward chaos for his amusement, making you a meat to eat for Daedric entertainment rather than an active participant. The property damage you caused and must pay for wasn't really your fault, yet the quest treats you as responsible, creating injustice where you face consequences for actions a god forced you to perform. The temple where you wake recognizes this pattern. They've dealt with Sanguine victims before and have a standard fine structure for the damage, suggesting this happens regularly enough that they've institutionalized the exploitation. When you pay the fine and complete the quest, you're rewarding both Sanguine for mind control and the temple for charging victims instead of the actual perpetrator. The rose you receive as reward continues this pattern, summoning Dremora, who aren't fully under your control, but rather serve Sanguine's interest through you, making you his proxy for spreading chaos. Sheogorath's Border Watch Prophecy. The quest to fulfill the Kashara prophecy and drive Border Watch into madness demonstrates sophisticated manipulation where you become Sheogorath's instrument for tormenting innocent people. The prophecy itself is completely fabricated. Sheogorath created it specifically to have a tool for destroying the town's peace whenever he felt bored, making the entire belief system a setup for future exploitation. The citizens' faith in the prophecy isn't based on truth, but rather centuries of careful manipulation by previous Sheogorath worshippers who embedded false history into the town's culture. When you fulfill the prophecy's signs by summoning rats and killing sheep, you're not revealing hidden truth, but actively creating the disaster the prophecy predicts, making it self-fulfilling through your intervention. The madness that follows doesn't teach any lessons or serve any purpose beyond Sheogorath's entertainment, representing pure cruelty disguised as theological event. The citizens never recover from the psychological trauma of seeing their worldview validated in the worst possible way, creating lasting damage to people whose only crime was believing religious teachings they were raised with. the cheese you receive as reward mocks the entire situation, with Sheogorath laughing at your willingness to destroy people's lives for novelty food. Clavicus, Vile's Umbra sword trick. The quest involving Clavicus Vile and the sword Umbra presents a choice between keeping a powerful weapon or trading it for a different reward. But both options benefit Vile rather than you. If you keep Umbra, you possess a weapon that slowly corrupts your personality and eventually drives you to the same madness that consumed its previous owner, making it a delayed curse disguised as powerful loot. If you trade Umbra for the mask of Clavicus Vile, you receive an artifact that makes you better at manipulation, spreading Vile's influence through enhanced persuasion that gradually erodes honest relationship. Either choice serves Vile's purposes. He doesn't care which you choose because both outcomes advance his agenda of corrupting mortals through their own greed. The sword's possession mechanics aren't obvious, working through subtle personality shifts over months of use that you might not attribute to the weapon, making the corruption harder to resist because you don't recognize it as external influence. Vile's worshippers who present you with the quest know about this trap, but participate anyway because serving their prince matters more than warning fellow mortals about danger. The quest's apparent freedom of choice masks the reality that Vile has carefully constrained your options to ensure any decision you make ultimately serves him. Malakath's giant rage strategy. The quest to obtain Volendrung requires challenging and defeating a specific giant, but the confrontation carries implications beyond simple combat. The giant Malakath directs you to kill isn't randomly chosen, but rather specifically selected because it violated Orcish territory boundaries, making your attack essentially a hit ordered by Malakath on behalf of his followers. Giants and orcs maintain complex territorial agreements that both sides generally respect, and this particular giant's trespass threatened to spark wider conflict between the species. By killing the giant yourself rather than allowing Orcish warriors to handle it, you prevent escalation that would result from orcs directly attacking giants, preserving uneasy peace through outsider intervention. Malakath rewards you not primarily because you're worthy, but because you solved a problem threatening his followers without making the situation worse. The giant doesn't understand why it's being attacked and dies confused about what rule it violated, representing how territorial disputes create casualties among individuals who never intended to cause conflict. Giants have their own complex social structures that the quest completely ignores, treating them as monsters to defeat rather than intelligent beings with understandable motivations for their border crossing. Hermaeus Mora's knowledge price. The quest to obtain the Ogma Infinium requires hunting for lost knowledge on behalf of Hermaeus Mora. But the book's creation process reveals disturbing truths about how Mora operates. The blood-sealed tome doesn't contain naturally discovered knowledge, but rather information Mora extracted from mortal minds, effectively stealing their memories and experiences to compile into volumes. The hunters, whose souls Mora collected, weren't volunteers, but rather people who stumbled onto knowledge Mora wanted to preserve, making them involuntary contributors to his library. When you use the Ogma Infinium, you're accessing skills and understanding that other people developed through years of effort, benefiting from their stolen experiences without their consent. The book can only be used once because reading it transfers the knowledge into your mind and simultaneously erases it from the tome, ensuring Mora maintains monopoly on information by preventing you from sharing what you've learned. Your agreement to recover the souls Mora wants represents becoming complicit in his knowledge theft. helping him capture more unwilling contributors to his endless library. The quest presents this as a fair trade, where you exchange service for power, ignoring that you're participating in slavery, where Mora traps consciousness for eternity, purely to serve as reference material. The collector's deadly consequences. The completion of Umbacano's Ayleid artifact collection triggers his death through mechanisms that demonstrate why some knowledge should remain buried. The crown you retrieve for him isn't cursed randomly, but specifically designed to punish those who collect Ayleid artifacts without understanding their cultural significance, treating priceless cultural heritage as mere treasure. Umbacano's death represents poetic justice, where his commodification of Ayleid civilization leads to his destruction by the very culture he exploited, though he never understands this irony. The artifacts he collected form a magical circuit when brought together, with the crown serving as the final component that activates protections the Ayleids embedded against future treasure hunters. His obsession with owning rather than understanding Ayleid culture blinds him to warning signs that someone with genuine scholarly interest would have recognized and heeded. The crown remains in the tomb after killing him because the trap resets, ready to kill the next person who approaches with greed rather than reverence, making the Ayleid defenses effectively eternal. Your role in enabling Umbacano's death raises questions about responsibility when you facilitate someone's destructive obsession, even while trying to warn them about dangers they refuse to acknowledge.